The Speaking Statements, the podcast of statements about the 50 U.S. states. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for alerts for when a new episode is released.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to our second intro of season 3 for the Speaking Statements. We have a guest to talk about Oregon. I want to announce Ryan Frei to talk about Oregon today. Hi, Ryan.
Hey, Julian. How are you?
I'm good. I have some questions about Oregon for you.
Okay, great.
My first question is, what do Oregon and California have in common? And also, what do they not have in common?
So Oregon and California are similar in a lot of ways, but there are some ways that are really different. So they're both on the Pacific Ocean, and they're both kind of West Coast states like Oregon, Washington, and California are all three similar in a lot of ways. So in Northern California, it's pretty similar to Oregon because it's close by, and Northern California has a lot of trees, but Southern California is desert and things like that. So it's pretty different. The biggest thing I noticed, so I lived in California for a while. California has a lot more people than Oregon. Oregon has really only one big city, that's Portland, and California has a lot of big cities. It has LA, San Diego, San Francisco, and a bunch of others. So I think that's probably the biggest difference is just Oregon is a lot more empty, a lot more nature versus California.
Yeah. When I think California, I think of beaches and pineapples. I don't usually visit in the West except for Washington and Idaho. So I don't really know much about Oregon, but I do know one thing. When I looked it up in my notes, it really had a lot of like nature stuff. So I thought you might mention nature.
Yeah, no, I think that's my favorite thing about Oregon is the nature. It's a lot like parts of Washington. It's only about 10 miles from where I'm sitting right now to get into Washington. So I guess that shouldn't be surprising.
My second question is, what is Oregon known for?
I think the biggest one you already mentioned, and that's just the natural beauty, the outdoors here in Oregon. We've got a lot of beautiful forests and mountains. I can actually see Mount Hood right now, which is the tallest mountain in Oregon, and it's got snow all over it and glaciers. There's also, a lot of deserts and open space when you get on the other side of the mountains. So there's a lot of nature. It's really diverse. You can be in one day. You can go all the way up into a snowy mountain, or you can go out to the ocean, and it's really pretty. Some of the other things, I think we're known for lumber. Because there's a lot of forests. Historically, there's been a lot of forest industries. So, cut down the trees for wood. And trees grow really well here, so it's a good place to do it. We have some interesting stuff here in town in Portland. We've got, it's sort of a unique town in a lot of ways. I think about when people come here, what they do. Everybody has to go to Voodoo Donuts, although that's now in other places, but they have lots of really yummy donuts. So if you ever come, I recommend it.
Well, for that, I do love donuts. For the fact I haven't had them in a while. My third question is, what is the Oregon Trail?
So yeah, the Oregon Trail, besides being a video game that I'm sure your dad and I both played as kids, it's how people got here before there were trains to get across the country or cars. So there was a trail that started in Missouri, and people would get in a wagon and either ride or walk all the way across the country to Oregon City, which is just a few miles south of Portland. It would take them months and months to get all the way across. And really, it's kind of how Oregon got started. People came into Oregon City and spread out and founded Portland and spread out over the valley here where there's quite a bit of farming, actually. So I talk about the mountains, but there's a giant flat valley called the Willamette Valley, and that's where a lot of the people on the Oregon Trail went to. And there's still a lot of farms today out there.
Yeah, I thought it was like a trail that you hike on, like in the woods, but I guess I was a bit wrong. My fourth question is, what is the Pacific Ocean like in Oregon?
The Pacific Ocean in Oregon is cold. A lot of people will go out to the coast and just get a chair and just sit on the sand because it's too cold to get in the water. And you'll notice that people call it here the coast. They don't talk about going to the beach because of that, because the water is so cold. But it's really, really pretty. So there's lots of big rocks and things and cliffs and beautiful views. So it's really popular just to come out and hike at the coast or drive along the coast. My kids actually, so we lived in Southern California for a while and started boogie boarding. And when we came up here, they wanted to do it, and so we got wetsuits. So we go out and swim and surf and play in the water, but we have these thick suits to keep us warm in the cold, cold water. So it's very pretty, it's very cold, and it's a lot of fun. We go out there a lot.
Good answer. What's boogie boarding? I think it's like dancing on a surfboard.
It's sort of like a smaller surfboard. So it's about half size, so about half the length of a person. And instead of standing on it, you just lay on it. And so it's really fun for kids because you don't have to balance. You just jump on a wave and it just carries you in. You just lay down on it, and it's a lot of fun. If you ever go to an ocean, you should find a boogie board. I think you'd enjoy it.
Yeah, I do like moving in actions. My fifth question and last question is, how is Eastern Oregon different from Western Oregon?
I think you mentioned that you'd been to Idaho. Eastern Oregon is a lot like Idaho in most places, versus Western Oregon is dense forests and trees. Eastern Oregon is a lot of farms and deserts and just open space. That's not to say that there aren't forests and mountains in Eastern Oregon, but by and large, it's mostly farms and things. It's also there are also a lot less people in Eastern Oregon than in Western Oregon. So Western Oregon has a few big cities, so Portland and then Eugene and Salem, smaller cities. Eastern Oregon doesn't really have any cities that are bigger than a small town, except Bend, and that's really kind of on the boundary between Eastern and Western. So it's a different kind of place in Eastern Oregon, but it's fun to go out there sometimes. There's different activities to do if you're into outdoors. One of my favorite things to do is to go out to some of the mountains out there. There's a lot of lava flows and tubes out there, and so it's fun to go hike and see the really rough rocks. But there's some of those in Idaho too. I know there's Craters of the Moon, but in Oregon there's like Newberry Volcano. There's some lava flows out by Lake Joseph and Enterprise, Oregon, and it's pretty cool. We don't really have that in Western Oregon because it all gets covered up by trees and pine needles and things.
Volcano, trees. Wow, sounds a bit scary. I'm finished with my questions for today. We're glad to have you here to talk about Oregon.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.
Now they'll do my notes for Oregon. It borders 4 states: California, Washington, Idaho, and Nevada. It also borders the Pacific Ocean. Its biggest cities are Portland, Eugene, and Salem. Salem is the capital, and Portland is the biggest. Herbert Hoover, who was the 31st president, grew up in Oregon. It became a state in 1859. It is the Beaver State. Oregon is the state with the most goat towns in the United States. Hell's Canyon is the deepest river in Gorge, North America. It is 10 miles wide and more than 8,000 feet deep. Llamas live in Oregon. Crater Lake is in Oregon. It is the deepest lake in the United States of America. And Crater Lake also used to be a volcano that exploded thousands of years ago. Oregon is the 33rd state. Now we'll start with the fast facts and Leo. What is the state tree? The state tree is a Douglas pine. What is the state? What is the flower? It would be the Oregon grape. What is bud? It's going to be the western meadowlark. What is the state animal? Probably the beaver.
What is the state fish?
It's Chinook salmon.
What is the state insect?
It's a swallowtail butterfly.
What is the state nut?
Probably the hazelnut.
What is the state bread with?
It's milk. Thanks for doing Fast Facts.
And I love milk.
Okay. Bye, Leo.
Bye, doing. I love to be on your episodes.
And for the finale of this episode, the Oregon quarter is some trees, and words that say Crater Lake, and a picture of Crater Lake. That's all for today. But check in next week for the middle of the season. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Speaking Statements.